Hello, everyone.
Hi.
I am your host, Karlyn Percil. Thank you so much for tuning into the final part of the Women of Color Stories with Shea Moisture Canada. We have had so many candid conversations about our hair story, about sisterhood, how we've been taking care of ourselves. And I am so grateful and thankful that all of you joined us on this exciting journey. And today, yes, it's our last part, but also I'm super excited for the very active participation we had from our community. And the three guests we have today are coming from that community, and we're so grateful to have you here. Please join me in welcoming Louise Victor, Symone Evans, and Kimberly West. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank
So,
you.
coming.
you shared your hair story journey, which is how you ended up here. So, I want to hear from each of you. Tell us a little bit about your hair story and what led you here. Louise, let's start with you.
Uh, Thanks, Kay. So I am a former Miss St. Lucia Universe, and I remember when I decided my hair was really damaged and I needed to really address it. There was still this fear and uncertainty. I cut my hair. What will I look like? Why should I go so short? I was in a totally different space. I was away from home in a predominantly Caucasian community in Wales. And there was this inner battle that happened. Do you really cut your hair, or do you just keep wrapping it and protecting it and pretending like, it's really okay when you know it's not? And I think the day came and I was just like, okay, enough is enough. Let's just get through this. But I remember the shock when, and even the number of people who call and message, who gave you permission to cut your hair? Why did you cut your hair? What are you doing?
Wow.
Um, how are you going to adjust? Like there were just so many questions, and people were literally, upset that I had made a decision to let go of that part of my identity. And but thankfully, I have a cousin. Her name is Kim here in London. She was right there with me. She's been natural all her life. So just having her there, that sisterhood of that support, having her be present and, girl, you're going to rock this. And she's been so fearless in everything she does with her hair. I think that was super, super important. And in light of our conversation today, that aspect of sisterhood is so, so important. And I was conflicted at first because I was like, what did you really just do? And
Mhm.
even, returning home and me leaving St. Lucia, number one, as a beauty queen, as the weave and whatnot, and coming back with this new look and new identity. It did take me a while, readjusting and just the shock again, being there in person and people saying, you cut your hair? Constantly being faced with that sometimes was like, eventually I was like, yeah, I did it. So what?
Yeah.
It's part of us. But I think, and like I shared in my story, my moment came, it was spring. I was in the park and there were four Caucasian ladies walking in front of me. And they were all different textures. One was really straight, one was had a light curl, and then they're walking in front of me. I'm looking at the trees, and then it just hit me like, the that's like the weave that we go to buy, literally it's legit coming out of their hair. I'm like, this is literally coming out, like,
Like it's
you
them
you
hair.
know
Yeah.
something, but then when it actually just slaps you just like that,
Right.
okay, this is what comes out of my hair, and that's that. And recently, sometime late last year, I was introduced to a book called Carry Commas Before Slavery, written by a St. Lucian. And it made such strong reference to the importance of our hair texture to given our temperature, our climate, not just in the Caribbean, but in Africa, and just that psychological connection and that spiritual connection right there too. I found it so profound that there was a spiritual element, but there was a biological and a physiological introduction in a way that I had never seen or never heard it. And growing up, I used to refer to my hair, I still will, because in St. Lucia there's half Indian and Indian, so the term nice hair is I didn't qualify, or I don't qualify
Don't
for
qualify for it.
having nice hair.
Yeah.
And I would always jokingly refer to my hair as still wool. And until I actually read the literature as to how our colonizers, they documented our hair as that.
I still will.
And so, yeah, so I became so much more intentional in referring to my hair as my curls or my crown. And the language shift that even happened after me being more cognizant of what that scar has been all along. It wasn't just a joke that I was saying to myself.
Right.
And I think more so too, I've gotten, even as I've been growing out my hair, because I did keep it short for a while, I started using things from the earth only. So I minimized products, but I was using a lot of like aloe, just straight from my father's garden in my hair. I washed it with hibiscus leaves some time ago. It's something I did as a child. And so to have been able to do that recently and just, castor oil from a very old man in my community, it just reaffirms that this right here, this is power, this is beautiful. So just own it for all that comes with it.
Wow. That's
Love that.
incredible. I'm really fascinated by, the unconscious quote unquote nice hair, or we call our hair still wool. And for those of you who don't know what still wool is, it's this, like, how would you describe it? It's like this really rough, it's made out of steel, and we
What you
use
wash
it.
your pots with.
Yeah, you wash your
yeah.
pots with it,
Yeah.
right? It's something that you use to clean dirty things. So there isn't a positive connotation to it. But again, we inherit those narratives and we don't realize how much is impacting our, like you said, Louise, that's a physiological connection to ourselves, our identity, our roots, and who we are. It's just so fascinating. Thank you for sharing that. Now, Symone, I saw you like you were going,
Yeah.
Like there are so many parts of Louis' story. You're like, this is also my story. Tell us about your story, Symone, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. You know what I loved about Louise' story is that the part where she said that she had that like epiphany when she saw those women, and it registered to her. And I feel that way too. Like my hair story is a bit different because I was born and raised in Kenya for part of my childhood. So growing up in Africa, your hair culture is completely different. You're not taught to hate your hair. You're not taught to think that your hair is any different because everybody looks the same.
Yeah.
And for me, how I went about loving my hair was as in, like when I was young, my hair was always taken care of. We would go do our hair on the weekends. Like it was always done. But moving here so young, I just got put in a place where very few of my friends look like me. So it was kind of trying to find that balance of, okay, I want my hair to look like this, but also I want to feel like myself. So it was always that struggle. But I feel like when I came to terms with who I am and my identity with like in my hair is when I just reached my breaking point where I had permed my hair, I had relaxed it, I had done everything to it to try and get it to be this pin straight, flowy, beautiful, luscious, and it just wasn't it.
And would you say that need for you to perm your hair and make it all straight is because of your environment? You were influenced
100%.
by what you
Yeah.
saw.
Yeah. And obviously, like when I would see my friends get in the water and their hair would come out and it would be so nice, and then I would go swim and my hair would come out looking something completely different, it would make me so sad. And like, now that I think about it, I don't know why it made me sad. And it's huge because like now kids who are 13, their influences are completely different than when I was 13. Whereas they can just go on Instagram and find a way to do their hair or go on YouTube. But for me, it's just like, okay, mom, can you help me with my hair? And it's the tangling, it's the pulling, it's just trying to figure all that out. And yeah, I ended up cutting my hair. I think that's where I was like, okay, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And that was the best thing for me. I found that I found out how to take care of my hair and how to love who I was within that when I cut my hair, because I truly got to see how nice it is
Yeah.
by going and starting from scratch. So that was life changing for my hair story. And yeah, it just made me look at things differently. Like even now, raising my daughter, I don't think of how I want her hair to be so straight. I just love it how it is. I take care of it how it is because I want her to learn to love herself and not to put herself in a standard where it's unattainable as a Black person.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it shows the power of representation, because one thing you said, in your story that really stuck with me is that I think if you were surrounded by more Black girls who also, when they went into the pool, their hair
Mhm.
shrank and it's now this beautiful curls
Yeah.
and coils,
Yeah.
then you'd have been like, oh, this is
Yeah.
natural. There's
Yeah, and like in Kenya, that's exactly what it was. Like I obviously my peers were all Black, so I never thought of these things. I never thought that my hair looked weird because everybody's hair looked like mine. So
Yeah.
it's just the coming into this world and coming into this culture where people look at your hair and they want to touch it. They were like, "Oh my God, how did it just go from this and it's just shrunk? It's like a sponge, like you were saying. The
Yeah.
steel wool, it's like, oh, it just repels water. How does it go like this?" And it's just like, okay, am I weird that my hair does that? Is it normal? But honestly, it's part for me, it was part of growing pains, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's the steps that you take to learn to accept who you are and learn to love yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, it shows me the importance of, we talk about representation matters. And this is why this series and conversations such as this is so important, because
Mhm.
that Black girl who's probably in a neighborhood or in a space where she doesn't see this. She doesn't see, here's the
Yeah.
short,
Yeah.
shape size, here's the nice frill, you have your bun and Kim
Oh
have
yeah,
her
yeah.
curls, right?
Hmm.
Seeing the representation of every single type of curl and coil and hair length and
Yes.
hairstyle
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
so important. And again, we don't realize how much this is tied to our innate need to belong, to be seen, to be heard
Yes.
as
Yes.
humans.
And
It's
I was,
wired in us, right?
yeah.
We
And
all
I
want
was speaking to my sister about this today as well. And we were just talking about how in this culture, it's like in Black culture, you like it's the same. You're still judged on what your hair looks like. You can't escape it. But
yeah,
for her, she was like, I'm judged because my hair is like a different type of C from somebody else, that it's like more kinky and someone else's is more soft. And I was like, stuff like that. If I was to go back to Kenya and ask girls my age now if they were going through that, the answer would be no,
no.
because they're not influenced by that. They're not influenced by being forced to hide their hair or
Wow.
make it softer.
Ah, I love that. So much to unpack there. Let's go over to you, Kim. I know, again, your story, and here's what I love about all of us. We all have this journey to our hair story. And as much as it's all different, like Louise, you're in the Caribbean, you're in St. Lucia, Symone, born and raised in Kenya, but now you're in Canada. Kim, I cannot wait to hear your story. Tell us some more. What brought you here?
Thank you. And it's so interesting hearing the stories and hearing the different paths that led to now actually getting to the point of loving your hair. For me, I feel like I'm still on that journey, and it's quite an interesting and amazing journey. Uh, there's different aspects of my hair journey. Like if I think about my natural hair journey first, I didn't choose my natural hair journey. My hairdresser chose it for me. I was pregnant with my first child, and she was adamant and said, no, I am not going to relax your hair. There's so many different studies out there in terms of the impact that could have on your child. I refuse to do it. And I could have then said, okay, I'll just go to another hairdresser. But having the conversation with her, it was also maybe a couple of years after the documentary from Chris Rock, where it talked about good hair and all the money that we spent to try and get straight hair. And even just the damage that we don't even know. There's not even proper studies done on what is happening when we put these chemicals in our hair. That I thought, you know what? I think God's telling me something. I have my first child. And of course, when you have your first child, you want to do everything for them. So I said, fine, I'm not going to relax my hair anymore. But I didn't accept my natural hair. Me going natural was me just wearing wigs. So I said, okay, well, I'll go to wigs, or I'll wear weave, or I'll maybe twist it. But me doing my actual own natural hair is probably only in the last 3 years. And it's interesting because I love what you said, Karlyn, about the importance of representation matters. I didn't have that representation growing up. I still didn't feel like I had it in my adulthood. I felt like there was a very strong pressure that my edges needed to be laid, my hair needed to be flowing, like Symone said. And so I had this strong feeling that I was not pretty. I had a strong feeling that my hair was not good hair. And that me wearing my hair like this, especially like now in an interview, me wearing my hair like this, never in a million years did I think I would do this.
Right.
And so I was born and raised in Canada. My parents are Jamaican. What's interesting for me in this journey now, doing my natural hair, and I'm only learning to comb my own hair in my 30s, which to me seems so crazy that I only know how to comb my hair now, is that my mom relaxed my hair when I was 5 years old. I have two daughters. I have an 8-year-old and I have a 4-year-old. And I look at them and I think, could I have done that?
Yeah.
But I don't judge her in that way. It was
Yeah.
just part of the culture. Like growing up,
Yeah.
the idea of your hair being twisted or having any little kink in it, you were unneat, you weren't proper, you can't go to church like that. Like there was just so many rules associated with your hair. And so what's interesting for me in the hair journey is that it's actually almost a fight against your own culture. It's not a fight necessarily against other, like how will other cultures perceive me, white, Indian, etc. It's more so how will my own culture perceive me? How will my mom perceive me? My mom, even now, oh gosh. The idea of me wearing natural hair and she'll just have casual statements of like, I'm not saying anything, but if you
You
feel like
know,
you want to put something in there to make it a little easier to comb. Not that your hair looks good, but if you want to save time, save like that's
that's right. And
that's her
that's
way
the
to
thing
try.
and that's the thing for Indian mothers. They're like, well, I'm not saying anything, but the look they give you, right? And that comment is so laden with, a lot of saying a lot of things that
Yes.
that they're saying they don't fully approve, right? And it's interesting, Kim, I want to go back to what you just mentioned, because I think it's a topic we don't talk about enough. So we talk about, Louise, you had your revelation around seeing the hair of those Caucasian women, and you're like, wait, that came out of their head, and now it's on we wear it. Like I've been wearing this on my head. But that internal within our own culture, that lack of acceptance, we forget everybody else, forget every other race, culture, but within our own culture, there is that, I don't want to say discrimination, but there is that little bit of a judgment. If your edges, to your point, aren't laid, if your hair is not fully straight, then you're deviating from a certain standard of beauty and acceptance. Like, when did you have that realization that you're not just fighting against everybody else, but just within your own culture for acceptance?
For me, it was recognizing that I was trying to live a life that made my mom happy instead
Mhm.
of trying to live a life that made myself happy. And so there was a number of things happening in my own personal life and how I raised my daughter, how I decided to change careers, that I realized, you know what, I need to talk, like it's so important, the language, the words that you use,
Yes.
it's so important in that piece. And it was more and more going to my hairdresser. Every time I went, she's actually a really good natural hairstylist, but she also does wigs and weaves to kind of do protective styles. And every time I would go to her, she was saying, you know what? Don't worry, I can do this style for you. It's going to look good. And I would always be against it. And then I recognized, there's not even like a particular moment. It was just an idea of like, you know what? Why don't I at least try? Because what I was fighting against as well, and I was kind of maybe lying to myself a little bit, wasn't even just myself and accepting myself or my family. I work professionally in marketing. I work in the tech industry. The tech industry already has very, very few Black people within it. On
Yeah.
top of that, a Black woman with natural hair. And so I was like, I'm going to go into work and there's going to be the questions and the conversation. And I don't even know if I feel pretty, much less now have to walk in very confidently and boldly and just stand up and be like, yes, I accept myself. And it was interesting because I was already going through my own internal struggle of
Mhm.
lack of confidence, not feeling good enough outside of my hair. And there was something in embracing my natural hair and having the courage to do that, that also helped me have the courage to show up just in general in my life and say, you know what, this is me. I'm going to be myself. I'm not going to try to pretend to be anything else. I'm not going to try to make you happy. I'm not going to go out of my way to accommodate anything that doesn't feel good.
Mhm.
And my hair was a part of that journey where I said, you know what? Let me stop trying to live for other people. Let me figure out for myself if I feel this is beautiful, and let's start down this path. And that's how I kind of fought the whole thing. So it was like, you know what? Forget culture, forget all these people. They're not living my life. And if I die tomorrow, what happens? Like, so it was like, let me start living my own life. The one thing that I'll say as well that's really important, I said I'm a marketer in tech. I also own a company called Kid Swag, which is all about this idea of raising confident kids that appreciate difference. And the concept behind that, the philosophy behind that is mindful representation. And I bring it up because we say representation matters a lot. And I think of that as the rally cry. I think of that as being like the awakening of like, yes, representation does matter. The philosophy behind the store in terms of mindful representation is being intentional. It's the action plan. It's a roadmap. And there's documentation that goes with that in terms of how do you be intentional about being very representative in not only your visuals, your language, but also the experiences. So that way we're constantly reaffirming and normalizing something that wasn't normal for so long. And that was really important for me. I was thinking, how can I be teaching my girls to love their own hair? And I'm not even embracing it. And that's why I had to go down that path.
Ah, so powerful. All of you have said so many things that have touched my heart. And I have to say, Kim, thank you for creating Kid Swag and we just talked about the importance of representation. And that is one of the ways to dismantle systemic barriers, right? Racism. Racism in here is something people don't talk about. We talk about representation, but we're not represented on all the screens and all the stages. When you look at beauty products, when you look at hair products, where are we? Where are our different forms of coils and curls? And this is why I loved this Women of Color series, Women of Color Stories series with Shea Moisture Canada, because it's bringing to light all those powerful stories. And I'm really hoping that every single person out there who's watching, they can see themselves represented in each different, in all the stories that have been shared all throughout the series, but also with all of you as well. And also understanding the importance that your hair journey, it's a journey. As you said, Kim, you started loving your hair as much as you went natural much earlier. You didn't fully embrace it. You were still wearing your wigs. You were still doing all the things except really celebrating your hair. And I think it's important for everyone to own that hair story. There isn't any perfect hair story. There isn't the one hair story. There are so many different stories. And even with myself working on Bay Street downtown in Toronto, same thing. I didn't see a lot of Black women with shaved sides. No. Natural hair? No. Right? You had to have those edges laid. You have to have, my hair was pressed. And I remember, I think one of my turning points as well in regards to my own personal hair story, I remember that, that weekend I had done my sides. Y'all know, like when you're not ready for the full perm, but you just got to do the sides because the edges, this whole thing that your edges must be laid for you to be professional and for you to be seen as beautiful. Like the personal narratives we inherit and we have to unlearn. I mean, there are so many, but while I was doing my hair, remember I left it in for too long. And how many of you can relate with that burn?
Eesh.
Yes.
Ugh,
Yes.
right? And I had that burn. And honestly, ladies, it was so bad, I couldn't even sleep on that side of my head.
Oh.
Because I left it. Yeah, it was painful. I couldn't even touch my hair properly. And I remember the morning I was going to work and I was like, who am I doing this for? Why am I putting myself through this physical pain? Already we're going through, the psychological pain. We're going through anti-Black racism. We're going through anti-race. We're going through discrimination, microaggression, gender microaggression, racial microaggression. And here I am voluntarily inflicting more pain on myself. And that was when I think I began that journey. As much as I didn't see a lot of examples, I just said, you know what? I am not putting myself through this again. I remembered the pain and I actually kept the pain centered so that I would remind myself, remember, this is what it felt like. So we are not going back there. And that led me to eventually going natural and never going back. But I do like my weaves. I like my wigs from Kinky Curly Yaki. And Louise, I remember what you said, the importance of that. And I think that also led me to being more mindful around what kind of weaves or wigs am I wearing? So mine, you know, kinky curly yaki, what I love about what Vivian K, who was actually one of our last guests, did was that exactly what you said, Louise. The wigs are coming from this here. They're curly, they're kinky, they look like mine. And it's a true representation of my hair and what my hair can look like. So I celebrate all of you for being so vulnerable, for being so brave, sharing your hair story. There is another woman or probably a little girl 10, 15, 20 years from now who might watch this. Or maybe they might not even have this problem. I pray they don't. We won't have,
so.
you know, we won't need to have
That's the hope. That's the desire.
yeah, we won't need to have that kind of conversation. Now, I know you've all been on a journey with your hair, and one of the things that I would love to hear from each of you, what is that one thing that you're celebrating? What is that one thing about your hair journey, the fact that you are here right now, boldly embracing every single curl and coil and kink? What are you celebrating right now about your hair journey?
I would say the length. I think my hair has reached its absolute, like, I was shocked when I straightened it this week after a long time, and it's like almost halfway like down my back, and I was like, whoa, this is what I get for not putting heat on it, for not doing
Right.
letting it be. Yeah, I think that made me really happy for sure.
And how long ago did you cut it? Did you do the big chop?
Oh, years ago. I think I've been fully natural for at least 7 years now. And like I still trim my hair. I get my regular haircuts every couple of months, but it's been a journey for sure for me to get to this point where I'm just truly loving my hair, and this is my go-to style all the time now. Or at least when I'm not wearing a wig, this is what I would normally put my hair in. And yeah, the length is what I can say has made me really happy.
Awesome. What about you, Louise?
I am celebrating just being able to wear my hair like this because that was part of the reason why I kept it short for so long. Because I'm like, when it begins to grow, how do I style it? It's just so much. It will take so much time. And that was one of the reasons why, even before, within my whole pageantry journey, when someone had asked me, would you ever go natural? I'm like, no, it's just too much time. It just takes way too much time. I don't have the patience for it. I'd have to get a hairdresser every weekend. I don't have the patience. But for me to go 2 weeks, like with my hair just like this, just spritzing and putting some gel in, I'm celebrating that. But I also wanted to go back to something Kim said in terms of like her mom's comments, because right now my mom's hair is pretty much identical to mine. But what both my mom and I normally get is from my grandmother, whose hair is natural, but she always likes it cornrowed or tamed or taken care of. So she's always at my mother and I asking us, why aren't y'all, combing your hair? Why you need basically you need to do something with your hair.
Do something like this is not combed. Like right now, your hair is combed.
Yeah, and Karlyn, she says it in Creole, so yeah, she will. So, my mom and I are constantly getting it, but we're just like, we're rocking this. So we're my mom and I actually celebrating it together. That technically we were rebelling against my grandmother.
I love that. And again, it goes back to what Kim mentioned here about the internalized, like within our own culture. And I think it's so important for us to stick true to what we feel that's right and what resonates with us, because again, it goes back to ensuring that we have so many different stories and representation of all types of hair. Like this is combed, this is combed.
Yeah.
We're rocking our hairstyles. What about you, Kim? What would you say right now at this moment, 2020, you're celebrating when it comes to
the biggest thing for me is actually embracing my hair in all venues. What I would do is that I would change my hair depending on where I was. So within tech, I work from home. The positive from working from home is that I don't have to go into the office and interface with my colleagues. I just have to do video calls like this. And so for the past year, because I started a new job last year, I wore a wig. So every time that I was going on a video call, I would put a wig on, it would be straight, etc. And that's how my colleagues saw me. And it's only last month that I said, this is ridiculous, especially again, because my daughters have such a big influence on my life. It's like, how am I walking around the house with my natural hair and just loving it and going out to friends, family, etc., my natural hair? But for my work experience, I'm putting the wig on. And in COVID times, your girls typically, there's like children behind me. Your girls are around you when you're doing work calls, etc. And I'm putting on this wig, and it just seemed crazy to me, and I just stopped. And what's so amazing about that is that I no longer was afraid of the questions or anything like that. And then today, this is just like serendipitous, I guess. I'm at the cottage and I'm not necessarily the strongest swimmer, but I can swim. And I've never gone out on the canoe or anything like that. And especially if you come to the cottage, I would usually actually weave my hair so that way I don't have to worry about my own hair. Especially I was like, I'm gonna be on a video call with Shea Moisture, hair has to be proper, etc. But I went swimming. I went swimming today and still was just like, and the best part, like what I'm celebrating is that with my natural hair, I didn't have to really do anything. I didn't have to worry about it. I was still like, oh, you know what? This still looks good for video. I can still rock this.
Rocket.
That
I love
I
that.
never thought that I would get to that point where my hair is okay in all different aspects of my life, just the way it is. I'm celebrating that for sure.
I love that. And yes, I agree. That is so awesome. And the other thing I think we forget is that our hair was actually made for us to live life fully, right?
True.
Because when we're out there, I remember, just being outside and let's say it starts to rain. People are so worried and they're running. I don't want to lose my curls. And I'm like, oh, rain down on me. My curls are
I
happy
know.
for
I
some more.
know.
Like, right? And to me, that is one of the biggest joys of being a Black woman, right? We are so versatile. We can do so much. We can change hairstyles. Water is our friend, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
and we can show up differently. But I want to come back to what you said, Kim, in terms of you all talked about what you're celebrating, but I want to talk about what you're struggling with. And that putting on of that wig for you to now go on the work call, to me, it's like another, and I want to get your thoughts on this. Is that another representation of us minimizing ourselves or putting on a mask now because we have to go to work and we have to be professional in the workplace? Because are your thoughts coming from the fact that you feel like professional Kim cannot be the one with the natural hair in the tech space? What are your thoughts when you're putting on that wig? Who's showing up in the workplace? The professional.
It's not fully me. And that was the part that hurt. It was the actual act of having to get the stocking cap and put it on. And I look in the mirror to make sure it was all proper. And especially because outside of those calls, I was just wearing my natural hair. It
Wow.
felt like a different person. And then I'm on the calls, and then you're only speaking about work stuff. You're not necessarily relating on any other level. You're just like, okay, did you get this done, that done, etc. And I didn't feel like it felt almost inauthentic. And for me, especially in just trying to now move through life, I I couldn't do it anymore. And it wasn't to say that wigs are bad, for sure. I definitely have it there. I spent my money, those will be worn. But now it would be worn as more like an accessory, the way that I put on earrings, where it's like, oh, I'm going to carnival. Yes, let me have my long hair to match with my outfit, right? But like,
Yes.
but in terms of work, to say, you know what, I can show up as myself. And it was also in that journey of confidence. Confidence is so big for me because I struggled with it for so long, and I'm only now really starting to pull myself out of it. In that journey of confidence, I felt I don't need another nail against me. I'm Black, I'm young, I'm a woman. Now I'm going to have natural hair. Before I walk in the door, these people are going to be like, why should we even work with this woman? Why is she on our project, etc. Like I felt like it was this other thing that was going to hold me down if I had natural hair. And so at least I could have the straight hair, and that would be one less thing that could be a conversation. But now it feels like my strength. So that struggle, and not to say, and that's why I said I'm still in this journey. It's not to say that I don't still think about it. I'm going to be doing a couple of other training things for marketing, just broader audiences. And it's not to say that I don't struggle and think, should I wear the wig? But what I did in terms of my journey and to force myself to really try to show up every time authentically and acknowledge the fear, but don't live in the fear, is I posted on
Oh,
my
yeah.
LinkedIn, which is and it's something that I wouldn't normally do. But on my LinkedIn yesterday, a friend posted about the fact that she goes through the journey of wearing one type of hair for work and another type just in her day life. I reposted that and said, you know what, I go through that same pain. For me to share that on LinkedIn was a step for sure. And
Yeah.
then on top of that, I said, you know what, I'm going to try to actually show up more authentically. And I acknowledge that my LinkedIn profile right now still shows my straight hair. I'm like, I'm not perfect. I still, because I'm in marketing, recognize the power of visuals, and the
Yeah.
strangers that are strolling through my LinkedIn profile, I need them to actually look at that profile and look at the stacks of work that I've done before they just look at that picture and write me off. So right now it is still straight hair, but who knows, tomorrow, in a month from now, I'll be like, you know what, let me just fully jump in and
Yeah,
embrace. But that's the struggle. And I think it's okay to acknowledge that there's a struggle, because it's
absolutely.
painful and it hurts and it's hard, but that's what's so good about going through it.
Exactly. And I'm so proud of you and thank you for sharing that, because I think people need to understand that the fact that we are having a struggle with our hair, we didn't choose it. And one of the things I always say about systemic racism is that systems don't dismantle themselves, people do. We did not choose to not be seen as beautiful women on those hair products or those beauty products. Somebody made a decision to put only Caucasian women and all the different shades and all the different ways and different textures of the hair, right? If we were in those positions, we would be putting ourselves there, right? If we were in this policy or making decisions around who's the final product, who will be on the final product, we will put ourselves. But the whole product or the whole output of systemic racism is that we are not in those decision making seats, and we are not the ones making having the final say. And this is what I love about this series, and also with social media, and like you said, even if all LinkedIn, we now have the power to choose how we want to show up. And as we show up as that person, we also have the power to tell our stories and to show the different facets of who we are. And I have been, when I made the decision to go natural, and then come December up here in Canada, it's winter. I usually do my protective style, not have either braids, or I'll do a weave. And then, yes, you do have to, come across the really, really stupid comments around, oh, your hair grew. I'm like, I was at work last week with this, like my hair is short. No, that long weave down to my shoulder, my hair did not grow over 2 weeks. Like, come on, guys, right?
Those
So you
comments are
have to
always
put up with all
hilarious.
those really stupid comments. But I decided to just ignore it, because one of the things on my hair journey that I struggled with was I felt the fatigue. I was like, oh, do I not have to explain to them? And I took my power back and I said, Karlyn, but why do you have to answer or respond anyways? Why do you have to educate people? You're not
Mm,
responsible for educating white people about your hair. Just show
thank
up
you.
as you, and that's it. And here's the thing about showing up as your authentic self. And that's what I've learned. And that was one of my struggles. And Symone and Louise, I'm coming to you to hear about your biggest struggle as well. My struggle was I felt the pressure of having to explain why I changed my hair, and how Black women are so versatile, and we are like some of the most powerful goddesses who have ever had to walk the earth. I said, you know what? Right? Of course, amen. I do not it is not my responsibility to explain my hair to anyone. And the minute I made that decision to take my power back from explaining myself and just showing up, everything changed. Like, I mean, people were still making comments, but I chose not to respond to it. I simply either ignored it, I gave a little smile or nod, or I say thank you. Or depending on how feisty I felt that day, I would either respond and say, yes, it grew overnight. Isn't it lovely? And I'll keep walking. Right. So it's so, you know, fascinating how much space we have to take up, but also how much we have to fight for that space. We have to explain everything from our hair to our skin tone to everything. And it's to me, it's so powerful to take that power back and to turn the struggle into power by not explaining myself. I'm going to walk in the room fully Karlyn. And if you don't accept that part of Karlyn, then what I ain't got none to tell you, because right now at this point, it's all about me and making sure that I take up space, because I want my nieces, I want all the little young Black girls who are looking and seeing Karlyn. I want them to know that you can be all those different versions of yourself if you choose to. So Symone, tell me, what
Yeah.
was your biggest struggle, and what is that thing that you really worked on? You might still be on the struggle when it comes to your hair.
I would say, actually, going on what Kim said, it's very true. Like we all know. For me, I was talking about my struggle with, especially going into the work field. And I was telling my mom is half Black, half white. So her struggles are completely different from like her kids, because we are like, our hair is so different from hers, and she never faces these issues that we face. So when I was explaining to her that, hey mom, one thing that is I've seen to be very true in this part of the world is that when I go for an interview, I have to decide, am I coming as Becky with the good hair, or am I coming as my natural puff, which I love. Like, I love when I have my puff out, and it just makes me feel confident because I just feel good. And I'm like, okay, so when I decide to go to an interview with my long hair, chances are I'm going to get that job. But I notice that every time I have my natural hair out and I meet with somebody and they speak to me, it's like, first of all, they say, oh, you don't sound Black on the phone. And I'm like, what do you mean? I hate that. And then second thing, they obviously comment on my hair. And once they comment on my hair, I know how that interview is gonna go. It's never a negative comment, but if somebody points out your hair, it's not what they expected. So I would say it's still a work in progress, but in the professional field, just like Kim, I'm learning to just, be me, do what I love, wear the hair I want to wear, because at the end of the day, like you said, who am I going out to impress? Who am I doing all this for? It's supposed to be for myself. It's supposed to give me confidence and not really for anyone else.
Yeah.
So I would say it's still a work in progress, because at the end of the day, you still struggle with these things. But when you learn to put that voice behind you and just listen to your inner self, I feel like that's what, continues to propel you to do what you.
I love that. Thank you. Louise, what about you?
My struggle is a little different. I think I spoke earlier about my fear of initially wanting to grow out my hair, but I think I'm in a much more comfortable place in styling it. But recently, just in the last month, I received the shock of my life, and that I can't use coconut oil in my hair, on my skin. I swear by coconut oil, and everyone raves about coconut oil, but I kept having this terrible breakout. And most of my products were, the aloe use of the castor oil and the coconut oil, made right in my community. So I swore by that. And I kept having a terrible breakout until I went to the dermatologist, and she's like, you have chromosome acne. And on a scale of 1 to 10, coconut oil has 10% chromosome. So you can no longer use coconut oil in your hair. You can no longer use coconut oil in your face or any product that has coconut oil. I was like, I felt betrayed because it's coconut oil. So I have the bottle there. It's among all my other products, and I'm just looking at it like, there's just no way. So I still have difficulty accepting that this power product, I cannot now use it. And I guess we go through our skin changes, our body changes in so many ways, but it's still very much something I'm trying to digest.
Wow, like your
That's
favorite product.
crazy. I know. Oh my.
I don't know what I would do if I had to give up, one of my favorite, like coconut oil is in everything, especially when my mom makes it for me. It's even more special. So I feel your pain. Now, we all have talked a little bit about, the emotional tax, like even being told that, hey, you don't sound Black, like that's, a racial microaggression, right? Being the comments on our hair, the comments on, how we speak, policing our tone. There is so much that we have, especially this year, going through the racial pandemic, the health pandemic. How are you has now become almost like a trigger, because there are days I don't know how I am. There are days I don't know if I'm coming or going. There are days where it's hard to keep moving. It's hard to have the conversation around the fact that we have to fight to show up as ourselves in our hair, however we choose to show up. What have you been leaning on in terms of your self-care, or something that you rediscovered that's really helped you to move through the really hard days this year? Kim, I'll start with you. What is that one self-care tip that is seeing you through 2020?
I think the biggest thing for me is taking space. You mentioned a couple of things there that I want to just touch on. The pandemic, the racial, anti-Black racism that really has, I think, galvanized the entire world. And for me, I work on a marketing team where I'm the only Black person.
Mm.
And I think we all saw those companies putting out posts on their LinkedIn, et cetera, trying to say, you know what, we stand with. And that was a really, really hard time because my company internally seemed like they wanted to do things, good intentions. But when it came time to actually put out a message, they kept leaning on me to almost give them permission to not have to. And it was interesting. Thank you, Symone. Yes, and it was,
No.
and so
Sorry. That's crazy. Like, forgive us, but
if you can imagine someone coming to you and being like, I know that you are in distress, and I know that there's so much pain in the world. And one, it was also a problem of thinking that it was my problem and not their problem. That was also just a whole other thing. But the idea of, we now want to lean on you to help us craft the message, or could you go on our profile and say something to show that we have Black people here? Or like, can you, maybe we just don't do it? And is that okay? Like, and it was crazy to me because that added so much pressure and just strain to what I was already feeling, and I wasn't doing self-care. I wasn't. I should have been. I had two girls at home. They're not in school. I was working ridiculous hours at work. I'm running a side business as well. I also have a husband, like just life, like just so much. And I felt like I was about to just scream. And the way that I actually was able to kind of regroup and get myself sort of back together was through a friend who messaged me. She had her bicycle and she's like, I've been going riding. You wanna go for a ride? And I was like, I haven't been on a bicycle. And so I'm like, yeah. And so that's become my thing on Sundays. This weekend will be different. But on Sundays, I now go riding. And the idea of being able to take time by myself, well, with my friend, but away from the girls, away from my husband, away from work, enjoy the world and really be very mindful of like, look at this amazing world that we have around us. And let's take a moment to breathe. Let me focus on the positivity that surrounds me. And then anything that is causing me strain, what can I do, whether it's my own mindset or actual actions, to ensure that I'm no longer letting that guide my life? Taking those moments has been amazing. And it feels so good to have something scheduled on Sundays where it's like, yeah, every Sunday, 11 o'clock, girl, let's go. Let's roll out. And so to have something to look out for, like that's been life-changing for me in managing my self-care. And then it runs into my days where at the end of the, or maybe at the end of the day, in the middle of the day where I'm like, you know what, this does not make me feel good. I'll take a break. I'm like, work does not need me right now. I need myself. And I'll take that moment for myself.
I love that. Work does not need me right now. I need myself. I need my moment. And you talked about two very important things when we look at the roots of resilience, right? And the roots of and also the whole fallacy of the strong Black woman. The fact that your workplace did not have the awareness to understand that you might be going through a re-traumatization right now of racial trauma, because seeing someone who looks like you, seeing how the police treat them, die, killed, the constant revisiting of that is damaging to our own psychological well-being. But the fact that they're not even thinking of that is again, it's something that as Black women we always have to fight for. Not only do we have to fight to show up with our hair in all its natural glory, in all its glory, in all its different styles, shape, and form, we also have to fight for our self-care as well. But I'm happy to hear that you're really tapping back into that resilience, leaning on community, your friend, sisterhood, your friend showing up for you and making sure that you're taking care of yourself. And also you deciding to put Kim first, because if Kim is first and she's pouring from a full cup, it means that your children, your husband, your workplace is getting the full version of Kim. Symone, what about you? What does your self-care look like? How have you been leaning on community or sisterhood to help you see through 2020?
My self-care was it was definitely different. It wasn't about my personal body or anything like that, but I found that when I was doing things around my house, especially like I moved into a new house and just making it look nice, fixing little places, creating a space that I love, that, for example, my room, I live here. Like I love being in my room and just making it a space that when I come into this place, it is somewhere that I love. Like I want to be in here. So I would say my self-care, to get away from even just taking a social media break, because honestly, we're going through a lot, has definitely been interior design, interior decorating, because it's mindless for me. It's something that it makes me happy. It's not too much. It's looking at pictures and copying it, or looking at stuff and getting inspiration. So taking that time away from reading the news, listening to the news, and just watching all this chaos constantly, because you know it's in our face, and once you follow it, it's there all the time. You can't go anywhere without seeing it. And what annoyed me the most, that made me want to take that little break, was seeing how all the white bloggers were dealing with it, and not really seeing it as something that was a big deal, but more so just let me plop this on my social media and keep it going. I feel like that's what really angered me, and that's why I needed to take the space. And yeah, so it's just been focusing on my house, I would say, and focusing on spending time with my daughter, and just nurturing that. And she's only one attention. So just that quality time, I feel, is really what pushes me.
That's awesome. And that's one thing that, I had to, remind people that how are you right now, especially in the height of a racial pandemic. Don't ask me, because I don't know. There are days my heart is so heavy with grief. I don't know what I'm feeling. I don't know what the day will look like. And I'm literally taking it sometimes minute by minute, hour by hour. There have been days where I wake up and like my heart, my chest, I'm feeling physical pain. And I'm also an empath. I'm an intuitive empath. So sometimes I feel the collective grief of everyone. And I've had to put everything down, because I honestly feel like I'm having a heart attack, and I have to just go. I'm fortunate, I'm privileged enough. I can just go to the lake. I live close to a lake. I just walk there. I lay on the grass, and nature always brings me back to myself. Nature and being next to water. Kim, I mean, I wish one day I could join you on a bike ride, but this girl still don't know how to ride a bike. No shade here. No, I said no shade. But one day I'm going to join you on a bike ride.
Do it.
So that we can ride together.
I'm right by the water as well, and we ride along the water, and it's amazing.
I know, it's so beautiful, but I walk along the water, but one day I will ride. Mark my words. Louise, tell us, what about your self-care? How has sisterhood, community, but also what do you do for yourself to make sure Louise is grounded, she's centered, and she's taking care of her?
Karlyn, I think by April, because in St. Lucia, we went into lockdown by the third week of March. And by April, I was just like, okay, what is this thing? And my word for the year for my success plan is confidence. I'm not sure if you can see it, but my light is not helping. But my word for the year was confidence. And I felt that with everything that just started happening, I was like, confidence where? You don't even know how this year is going to turn out. And I began to start losing my confidence. It's like I started off on a really good trajectory and owning the acronym that I developed for confidence every day. But as everything started to happen one after the other, I just felt the confidence was leaving me. And in the last couple of weeks, I've been able to rebuild that in certain decisions making, as well as, and speaking of sisterhood, just during the week, my accountability partner, I had a conversation with her about a decision that I had to make, or I was thinking of making. And it was so empowering for her, because she has 3 kids, and it's been a lot balancing work and the family. And through that conversation that we had in the afternoon, in the evening, she sent me a video. She just went back to her planner, and she felt re-inspired. She felt reconnected with a certain part of herself. She felt grounded again, just being able to revisit that, because so much began happening, and she started to not really give herself the time that she needed. And I think, yeah, it's been being able to re-own my confidence and just interact with this simple sheet of paper every day, that girl, no matter what it is, their confidence doesn't have to look like one thing, but it's almost like I developed different variations of confidence for me, so that I don't judge myself too heavily on not showing up in the way that I initially envisioned at the beginning of the year.
That's powerful. I like that, because our best will look different every day. And I think as women, as Black women, we shoulder so much, we carry so much. For some of us, we're the everything for our families, we're the everything for everybody at work, in our communities. And sometimes I think we forget that the first person we need to be fully connected to with is ourselves. Because the more grounded we are in who we are, all of us, from the that crown all the way down to our feet, right? This is what will help us to create that narrative, not just about who we are, but how we want to show up in the world. And we're able to now take that and create the legacy that we want our children and our grandchildren and our nieces and nephews to be a part of. And I know that for each of you, just by showing up as who you are, just by grounding yourself in your truth, and owning your own hair story and being a part of this series, you are creating a legacy where others can find what is the confidence or that ability to show up in the world as themselves. And that is so crucial when it comes to our very own resilience, because we even the whole idea that we are strong, right? It for a lot of people, they see it as, it means we don't need help, it means we don't deserve empathy, it means we don't deserve compassion. And I think that we're always fighting for that. So I want everyone to remember that however you show up today, strong can look like whatever you want it to look like. Strong can look like you staying in bed all day and giving yourself that time to just be, to reconnect, to rest. Rest is part of the resistance. And that is something that I've been trying to prioritize as well, making sure that I prioritize my rest, and that so that I can show up and I can do this work, because it's a long lifetime journey work. And I will be coming back to watch this series as part of my community and sisterhood, to just remind myself that I'm not on the journey alone. And I know for each of you, you have your own community as well, but we're very close to ending. I want to just do a rapid fire. I want each of you to go around and just final words. What would you say to that young girl or that person out there who's currently on their hair journey and they're struggling? As part of our saying goodbye, I want you to share something, just some encouraging words with everybody out there. Kim, what would you share?
I think of my daughters and then sort of expand beyond that. And the biggest thing that I say every time is that your hair is beautiful. They have two different hair textures. And the idea of constantly, just even when you touch your hair, whenever you have the moment, to constantly just say, you know what, this is beautiful. I am beautiful. And however way this wants to grow out of me is beautiful. And then please, I seek out representation. This whole idea of mindful representation means being very intentional of curating spaces, going out and looking for areas that are going to reaffirm this journey that you're on. The biggest thing for me was definitely YouTube, programs like this. Instagram has been so amazing. I loved the Shea Moisture commercial where they show that they were now going to be in all the stores, not just the Black store. Like, look for places that are going to constantly reaffirm that anything that you do, because you're doing it and being true to you, is the most important thing, and you're beautiful.
Thank you, Kim. Symone.
Yeah, I would say to the young girls who were just like how I was, or who may be going through this phase where they don't look like their friends, you are beautiful just how you are. Your hair, everything about you is perfect because it's you. And once you learn to love yourself on the inside, it shows everywhere. And that honestly, there'll never be someone that looks like you. So just accept it and love yourself.
Thank you. Beautiful. Oh, love that. Louise.
Um, one of my biggest lessons or reminders just this week was to celebrate the small wins. And it's something that we're not told as little girls, growing up, that every day there's something that we should be celebrating. And even as it relates to our hair, just the fact that this is standing up as beautifully as it is, this is a win for me. And your win is not defined by what somebody else wants for you. Your win is defined by the outlook that you had for yourself and embracing what the lessons that came with a particular experience and how you grew in that journey. So it may not necessarily just be your hair, but in all aspects of life. Understand that there are small wins, even if the big picture was not necessarily achieved in the way that you envisioned at first.
I love that. And ladies, thank you so much. And for all of you who are watching right now, thank you so much for being a part of the Women of Color Stories series with Shea Moisture Canada. Continue to check out those amazing stories on the Shea Moisture Canada page on Instagram. We had 4 different conversations. So go back and watch all the conversations. Let us know what stood out for you the most. We are so grateful that you were here with us on this journey. Kim, Symone, Louise, thank you so much. And if you're looking for more community and sisterhood, don't forget to also check out for Sister Talk. We have every Thursday a Sister Talk Biz Mentorship Circle as well. You can find out more on my page too. Thank you all. Thank you, Shea Moisture Canada, for having this. It was a great honor hosting this series, and we will see you again soon. Remember to love who you are, because who you are matters. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.